This episode is brought to you by Team Lodge. Thank you, Team Lodge, for supporting the podcast. They have some really cool campers. They're very unique. They actually drop all the way to the ground, unlike any other camper, so they're stable and they're warm, super, super warm. You can put your four-wheeler, your side-by-side in it, so when you get there, take it out, drop it to the ground, and you have a nice, warm place to stay. Check them out at teamlodge.com. This episode is sponsored by Sawyer Products. Sawyer is a cool company that provides not just great products like water filtration systems, first aid kits, insect repellent, and sunscreen. They also are giving clean drinking water to people around the world. Every time you buy a water filter, be it the small one for your water bottle or the one you hook onto a garden hose, you and Sawyer are helping a developing country with good, clean water systems. Their insect repellent is astonishing. They even have some you spray on your clothes or your pets to keep those creepy, nasty crawlies away. Their sunscreen works so well you only have to apply a few times a day versus every 50 minutes with the other guys. It is truly amazing. So go get some Sawyer products that not only work great, but also give back to the communities around the world. Check them out at Sawyer.com and tell them you heard it at Eastmans.
I appreciate you coming on, Kevin. We've known each other for 5-6 years, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, you came up to Powell, saw our headquarters, came up to Powell, and taught us to shoot pistols. Which was fun.
That was a departure from the ordinary day at Fieldcraft. Getting flown into a private venue on a private plane and looking over at my fellow passengers being like, we're carrying guns on a plane right now, and no one stopped us. It was
a lot of ammo.
And a lot of ammo, which was during the ammo crisis.
That's right.
The dry times.
That's right. I remember when we planned that, I had to scrimp and scrounge and everything I could do to come up with enough 9mm ammo to do that event. For those that don't know, I mean, how would they know, right? I bring Kevin and his team from Fieldcraft up to our headquarters, and we did a day training on personal defense with a pistol, and for not just me but my whole team and their spouse, which was a lot of fun. And it was fun because there's gals in my office that never touched a pistol before that, and they're rabid hunters and rabid pistol shooters now because of that.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable day because number one, we're in Wyoming. It's God's country up there. Number two, we had such a fun time working with you guys because you're a family, and it's always more fun shooting with a group of people that know each other because the joking, the ribbing, the friendly insults come out, and people just remember that. And I think everyone got out of that something that they hadn't seen before or hadn't done before. Definitely more comfort. We verified a couple people that their sights were not off, and we shot good shots with their pistols.
Yes.
But it was a blast. And even though I'm relocated to North Carolina, I'll come up anytime.
Okay.
Maybe we'll get Fieldcraft to pay for it. Likely not. But that being said, I'll come up anytime.
Oh, perfect. I don't know if I can fly you from South Carolina up there as easily as Utah to Wyoming, but you've led an interesting life and have a teacher's heart, which we'll get into that. But where did you grow up?
Okay. I grew up in Bristol, Connecticut. Now, Bristol, Connecticut, to make it relevant to everyone, it's the home of ESPN. So we have ESPN satellites. We have a whole ESPN campus in Bristol, Connecticut. But if you're from Bristol, Connecticut, you know that ESPN is almost separate to the community. Like, it's part of the community, but we have people driving in from out of town that work there, and it doesn't integrate as much with the community as one would think. But that being said, we do have a strong sports base. Bristol is the greatest little blue collar big city you'll ever go to. 68,000 people, experienced post-industrial decline in the 90s, and it's really starting to come back. And for me, it was home. And the beauty of Bristol was that it was an hour from the coastline. It's an hour from Bristol to the mountains up north, like going up into Massachusetts, going up to Vermont and New Hampshire, maybe 2-3 hours there. We're close to Boston, close to New York City. And everyone thinks Connecticut, they think farmlands, they think country, they think UConn basketball.
Right.
Which that's all a lot true, but we have some amazing wilderness out there. I grew up fishing on the Farmington River. I grew up fishing on Long Island Sound. I grew up hunting on water company property, pheasant hunting. And I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful state. Sometimes the politics and my politics don't align, but I grew up in such a great part of the country with just good old-fashioned values. I grew up in the 80s and to an amazing family, 2 older sisters, an amazing set of parents who, were married for 54 years. And on top of that, they were working and married together. So my dad was a doctor. My mom was the office manager. So imagine.
Working together, meaning in the same office.
Working together and living together. And they were best friends. And, recently we lost my mom, but I learned so much. Thank you so much. I learned so much about their relationship and what I want out of my relationship with my girlfriend now, because, my dad, until the last few days, I mean, he was right by her side, and he said, someday, she's going to be waiting for me. And it's like, yeah, it's terrible to see these things happen, on this earth. But my dad reminds us that it's not just about here. It's about what's coming afterwards. And so powerful in such a terrible time, but to be reminded. So what a great family, what a great place to grow up. And that really kind of set me on the path to do all the stuff I'm doing now.
That's awesome. Family values, we talk about this a lot in our organization because, I'm surrounded by very God-fearing, manly men, and that all have really good families and they're being good dads. That is such an important thing, and it's lost a lot of times in our country right now. And I think it's one of the reasons we're struggling big time is the family values that are instilled from parents and fathers and mothers. They have a different role, just like them at work. Your dad was the doctor, mom was the office manager. They can't do each other's jobs.
Right.
But they rely heavily on each other.
Right.
So same thing in a marriage, same thing in a family. So did you play sports? Big basketball state, right?
Huge basketball state, to the point where everyone wants to come to Connecticut to go to UConn,
right,
to be part of that life. And growing up, I was not interested in basketball, football, baseball. I was never interested into any of that. And people have heard me say this on other podcasts. My father grew up in the Philippines during World War II when the Japanese invaded. He lived in a cave, which is why I grew up listening to my dad's stories of this is what survival was like in the jungle. I carried a Crossman air rifle to hunt birds. We fished at night. And that's what got me going. So to this day, I can't tell you more than 2 people on any football team, baseball team, basketball team, and I don't care.
You mean Taylor Swift's boyfriend?
That's right. That's right. And I will say that on the Super Bowl night, I fell asleep at 7:30. I was just getting done teaching us a survival class in Maryland at Gossman Knives. And I got home and I'm like, I'm going to sleep. I will watch the Super Bowl for the commercials, but I don't care about the game.
Yeah.
So growing up sports wise, I was never really interested in them. My dad and I would watch boxing. My dad loved boxing. And my dad and I would watch professional wrestling.
Yeah, because in Asia, professional wrestling is a big deal.
That's right.
Of course, that's different than the WWF wrestling that we have here. It's for real Olympic wrestling.
Yeah. So I was never really into those sports. I went through a phase where I watched basketball, but as a kid, it was fishing. It was hiking. It was every kid does this. You get your little posse of friends on your mountain bikes and you go places that your parents say, don't go there. You're going too far.
Yeah.
You always end up going there. You end up breaking
stretching the comfort zone.
Yeah. Something like that. So I never had that formal organized sports background, but I got into sports that weren't mainstream at the time. So when I was 14, I got into whitewater kayaking. And I would tell people, I'm like, I kayak. And they're like, what is a kayak? And this is before the days of being able to buy them at big box stores or before they were widely available. And I remember people like, where are your legs? How do your legs fit in that thing? No one knew how it worked. And that was what I did because I saw with my dad spending quality time, getting back to your statement, we were watching a show and I was like, Dad, I would love to do that. And he looked through the yellow pages pre-internet and he's like, oh, this place rents kayaks.
Let's try it.
Let's try it. Right. So, it's interesting.
Did he go with you for a while?
He would go and watch, but keep in mind, my dad had me when he and my mom.
He's World War II generation. He's significant.
He's 85 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 43. I'll be 44 in April. So he was 41.
40s.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. Like by the time that this is coming around, like he would sit, and my dad's hobby is reading language books. He speaks about 6 or 7 languages. So he would sit and read his language books while I was on the river learning from an instructor, and then he'd drive me home.
You're kidding me.
No,
language books? What is a language book? He just learned languages?
Yeah. So my dad grew up speaking the Filipino dialect, Spanish, and English. He learned English from reading comic books. And my dad always said, languages came easy to him. So he picked up French, he picked up Italian. To this day, he's still practicing a little bit of what is he doing now? He's doing Portuguese. He goes to Portuguese masses to pick up Portuguese because there's similarity. Like instead of buenos dias, it's bon dia.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's similarity.
Yeah. Those are called Latin-based languages.
Yeah,
It's French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish. They're all really similar. If you know one, you can understand the others.
Yeah. And my girlfriend is half Brazilian, so when she's speaking Portuguese fluently, I can pick up enough where I can get by, and then I feel like an idiot speaking Spanish back. But that being said,
my high school Spanish teacher actually taught us Portuguese. Come to find out, I went to college, took a college Spanish class, and failed it miserably. Come to find out, we weren't even learning Spanish. We were learning Portuguese, and nobody knew.
Okay. Yeah. So just rounding it back to that question about the sports. When I was a kid, it was when I spent time with my dad, who most people would learn sports from, right? You let's play a game of catch in the backyard. Let's throw the football around. Let's do it. Like my dad was always like, hey, let's build something for the toys that you have. And I'll admit, like I went through a phase where I had like a little bit of a spoiled phase where I was like, I want this toy, that toy, and I got it. But I found that what I learned to grow into liking more was when Dad would build let's build the suspension bridge out of fishing line and tongue depressors. And that was so cool to me. So I think my creative side today was spawned by my dad being creative and drawing sketches for me and building things for my G.I. Joes and building like landscapes in the backyard, with like rocks and the garden hose to make the creek. I think that's really what kind of got me going. And I'll tell you that is what I think the whole idea of fatherhood is about. Yes. and family is about, because you will forget the physical items that you have, but you'll never forget that experience together. And I remember eventually my G.I. Joes became target practice objects for my air rifles, but I never forgot the things that we made together and being in the outdoors and camping together, and my dad being like, okay, so we'll get you a knife. And I remember the first knife we got together, like that was to me, it filled the gap that organized sports take it up in so many people's lives today.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not going to say either way is better. That's just unique.
Yeah.
And it's different. And it's led you on a path that you've been able to utilize those skills. And so college, yes. I know you were a teacher, so Correct. You have to have had some college. So yes. Where'd you go to school? At UConn?
No. So I did get into UConn. I applied to UConn. That was one of my schools that I was like, it's nearby. It's fantastic. How
big is UConn?
UConn is massive.
Number of students.
30,000, 40,000. But and keep in mind, like I went to a Catholic elementary school, junior high. I went to a public high school. Culture shock right there. My graduating class from 8th grade was 16, and my graduating class in high school was 200 something.
Ooh.
So I went from a very small class to a very large school, about 1,000 kids. And then, I was like, well, I really missed that identity of having that religious background. So I was like, I'm going to look for a Jesuit school. My dad went to a Jesuit college. My sister went to Boston College. So I was like, they turned out okay. So I was like, I should probably do the same. And I went to Fairfield University, down in the southwestern part of the state. I studied American Studies. At one point at Fairfield, I was like, I'm going to be an English teacher. And I was like, I don't want to be an English teacher. And then I was like, I'm pretty good at remembering constitutional history. I was like, maybe I should be a lawyer. And I swear that up until my senior year, I was ready to go to law school. I was ready to take on a different career. My sister is an attorney. And that senior year was 2001. I lived on the beach And I could see when the planes crashed into the Twin Towers, we could see the smoke plumes from Fairfield, Connecticut, from New York City.
Oh my gosh.
So that night, that day, it changed everything. You know, we had classmates who lost parents in the trade centers.
Wow.
No one was able to get through to their loved ones because Fairfield was comprised of Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. And a lot of those people had New York and New Jersey based cell phones. So I remember just giving my cell phone to people and being like, call whoever you need, because I had a Hartford based line. That day was the first day I ever gave blood. And I was, like I said, I was planning on going to law school. I took the LSAT shortly after 9/11 and I bombed it. I was like, I did better in the practice test, but my mind wasn't right because we didn't know if we were going to be drafted. We didn't know if we were under attack. We didn't know what the next, we had an anthrax scare on campus. So I was like, all right, I'm going to graduate and then I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And at one point I was like, do I want to interpret the law as a lawyer or do I want to enforce the law as law enforcement? And I had at one point a meeting with someone who was in the DEA and they were like, well, our Boston based office would be the closest. So then I graduate college and everyone puts on freshman 15. Well, I went into college at like 185 pounds. I came out of college at 230, maybe 230, 235. So I looked at the police officer standard test and I'm like, let me use that as my benchmark to see if I can actually do this.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to run and I was like, oh my God, I need to lose weight first. So I dropped a bunch of weight.
It'd be a lot easier without 30 extra pounds.
There's that thing called, fat that just gets in the way of being an athlete. And I had to get rid of it. So I started losing weight, but I was like, I can't just be a professional athlete to try to lose weight for this career. I need to do something. Started substitute teaching. And I was like, well, let me get my follow-up degree and just buy some time. So that's when I went to Trinity College and I got my master's in American Studies, did a whole bunch of writing there. And in that time as a substitute teacher, I fell in love with teaching. I was like, man, I actually know something about the topic. These kids are engaged. They were asking good questions. They would come up to me and say, thank you at the end of the day. I was like, maybe I should be a teacher. So I went and I took the exit exam to be a teacher before I took the entrance exam. And I said to myself, if I can pass this exit exam, then I have what I need to do this.
Right.
And I passed within like 2 points of being like at some like distinction level. And I'm like, I guess I should become a teacher.
This is writing on the wall.
But
literally.
Here's my favorite part of this story. So I passed the exit exam, which is all content driven. And people say like the exit exam is harder than the entrance. The entrance exam required math. And I am the atypical Asian. I drive really, really well. And I am terrible at math. So I'm sweating bullets that I was like, I have to pass this math test, which these are like basic algebra, geometry and whatnot. Well, I studied and I eventually passed it the first time through. And I'm like, thank God. So now I have a master's degree. I could technically teach at a college. I passed the exit exam, the entrance exam. I take a long-term substitute teaching job. And halfway through it, they tell me, Kevin, we have to replace you. You're not highly qualified. And I was like, excuse me, not highly qualified? Like I have research papers that are in the Hartford Studies collection at the Watkinson Library. How am I not qualified? They're like, you didn't take the how-to classes, the pedagogy classes. You're not certified. And I'll tell you, my whole life, my story, what I would encourage people to, if you're going to take anything from this podcast, is you never give up. You keep driving on. And our family motto is not to the last drop, meaning you keep fighting until the last drop of blood is in your body. And it would have been very easy for me to say, well, the hell with teaching. I'm done with teaching. Screw this.
Yeah.
I said, all right. So I continued substitute teaching and I found the shortest program to get certified. It took like a year. But the beauty of it was by the time I finished that program, I had enough credits where when I eventually got hired as a teacher, I was brought on as a master's plus 30 or 6th year. So I started at a higher pay level. So even though I started later in life, I started at a higher pay level. And
you played catch up.
I played catch up. So it's very easy, like I said, to get kind of stuck in neutral and say, I can't do anything with this, but you just got to keep driving on. And I taught at the high school I went to shortly after that for 14 years before I joined the company now. And I loved so much of that job.
What did you teach? History?
I was a history teacher. I taught initially world history to freshmen, U.S. history to sophomores before we moved the U.S. history curriculum to U.S. history to juniors before we moved it to sophomores. And then I taught a whole number of electives: law and justice, sociology, psychology, geography and cultures. And then I eventually became a advanced placement instructor, teaching college level classes at the high school, world history, human geography, and so forth.
That is awesome. You have a teacher's heart, that's for sure.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
It is the most intoxicating sound when you hear a student say, "Oh," because you know that you just brought them to a new level. And I don't care if that is learning marksmanship or learning about the Mongols or teaching someone how to properly tie a knot. It's addictive.
Yeah.
And I'll say that I love that drug.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you do? So Fieldcraft, you work for Fieldcraft Survival.
Correct.
And Mike Glover's company. So what do you do there?
Well, we wear a lot of hats at Fieldcraft. And when I was brought on to be the director of survival training, building out that survival program. I moved from Connecticut to Utah for that. And shortly after getting to Utah, I said to Kevin Owens at the time, I was like, "Well, Kevin, what do I do?" He goes, "When you get here, just start working." I'm like, "What does that mean?" Like,
working on
like working on what? He's like, you'll find work, man. Just find work. So that was what I needed to hear, because I thought it was going to be like, all right, you're going to be scheduling, you're going to have to be accountable for this course. And for many years it was not, but it was just like, find work, find companies to work with, put out podcasts, write blogs. And I remember they shortly after getting there, they said, "Well, you're not just going to be teaching courses. We need you to every once in a while film content. We need you to podcast for us. We need you to blog. We need you to travel." And it became a very, very all-encompassing job where it was hard to find that work and life balance. And there's no exaggeration. Living an hour away from the company, I would leave at 8 a.m, get to work at 9, sometimes not get home until 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to rinse and repeat and do it again all the next day.
Right.
So I was putting in 80-hour weeks the first couple of years that I lived out in Utah. And then I eventually made the transition from Utah to North Carolina, where I ran the North Carolina office. And now I'm the only man there at the North Carolina office, but I have contractors.
Rent them all out, did you?
It wasn't me. But I will say that I'm still very good friends with all those folks that are there. And I'll say that our subcontractors are coming in to teach the various classes. And that office, is where we run certain things, but not everything. And now I have a better life and work balance, which is so important because now, I know I can podcast during the day. I live very close. I'm only 10 minutes away from the office. I don't have that hour-long drive. Right. I have an amazing group of friends out there. And then getting back to the whole idea of family, if my family ever had an emergency back in Connecticut, I can jump in the car, I can do 80 miles per hour, and I can be there in 10 hours. When we had an emergency back in 2022, I couldn't get home for over 24, and that is the longest 24 hours when you know that your loved ones could be dying and you're not there.
Right.
So my whole thing was, I'm going to North Carolina. I'll stand up the office. I'll be close to family. Well, now I'm close to family. I've sold out multiple courses, more courses in North Carolina than I ever did out in Utah. And I've got such a great network. So I'm in a very happy place. That's right
awesome.
Now. Yeah.
Awesome. So Fieldcraft, what are some of the courses that you guys offer that, an audience would go, because I get this question a lot, actually. Yeah. There's so much knowledge that we have lost over generations because we aren't that farming, that farming community that had to figure it out. They had to, tractor's broke. You got to figure it out. Battery's dead. How do we do that? Flat tires, all that stuff. We've lost a lot of that. So what are some of the courses that you guys provide that are, number one, popular, and number two, so important to just the average American? Okay,
so I'll start with my wheelhouse first.
Yep.
I'll expand on there, and you'll see that I'm going to talk for a while on this one because we do a lot. So again, being on the survival side of the house, the one-day class is modern survival skills. And like you said, there are skills that people have lost. Like, how do you build a fire? And unless you have a wood-burning stove, a lot of people show up to my class saying, well, I have a lighter, and when it doesn't work, I don't know what to do. Oof. So modern survival skills is building fires, learning how to hold a knife and use a knife properly, tying knots, building emergency shelters, treating water, signaling for help. The wilderness survival overnight goes into more long-term living, where now we're showing people, okay, you're going to use the knife to do more. You're going to do one-stick match fires. You're going to learn even more knots. You're going to build primitive shelters in case you don't have a tarp or emergency shelter. But then we're going to do some primitive cooking. I'm going to show you how to make drop bread, fry bread. Last class, just last weekend, we had people who had never taken a slice of top round venison, sliced it thin, and put it directly on charcoal or like the burning coals. And when I took it off and I handed it to some students, they're like, that's better tasting than anything I've ever had. I'm like, that's the flavor of the wood that we're burning. And we're showing you how to use
that's
hardwood.
how it was created to be ate.
Exactly. So we do that in the 2-day class, and people will leave there after the 20 hours of instruction and they're like, I can't believe 20 hours of teaching went that fast. Granted, it's 36 hours total, but they're like, we wish this were longer. So we did an advanced survival experience, which is 48 hours in the field, where it's a scenario-driven experience. Students are given fewer items. They have to be more resourceful. They have to fish. Everyone has to have a fishing license. And we stage things along the way. So the survival curriculum is done. We have 3 levels. And then there's always private training that people can do with me. That's a la carte. Like if someone wants to learn friction fire, I'll do 6 hours of teaching how you make cordage, how you process wood, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Then we also do land nav. And that's really my baby, where we have a 1-day land nav class. We have a heavy focus on map and compass, learning how to read UTM coordinates, MGRS coordinates, how to measure distance, determine direction, all that great stuff. The 2-day is very field oriented, where we have a lost child exercise. We give the students a map. We give them coordinates. We say, you have to navigate from here to here to here, figure out your distance, direction. You have X amount of time. Don't let those lost children die. And when we ran it out here in Utah, we had people running to try to find the lost children. And we only had one guy out here in Utah in the 3 times that we ran it, find all 12 within an hour. He came back beet red. The map that he had tucked under his arm was worn completely white. So all the ink was worn off of it. And it turns out that he was in preparation to become a Green Beret, and he took it as serious as possible. Like he said, I'm going to have to do this for real someday. I need to be serious now. And it was
wow.
Like, that was so awesome.
That is really cool.
But we're running that class out in North Carolina. And then I've been teaching the defensive shotgun, which is really so much fun. And I don't fancy myself a gun instructor, even though, I've gone to Gunsight. I've won the Silver Raven there. I've gone to Glock Academy. I've won the Top Shot there. I've gone to SIG. I've won Top Shot on it. Like I love shooting and I'm good at it. Not to brag, but
no, you are. I've seen you shoot.
Okay, well,
it's impressive.
So I love the shotgun because it's a forgotten firearm.
Yeah.
And I get it. AR-15s are a lot of fun, and I love precision rifle. It's a misunderstood platform, but when you show someone how to shoot a shotgun, they have the capability of taking any animal off of North America, and they can defend their home. And I love teaching the shotgun curriculum with my friends Jerry Young and Rick Lofton. They're awesome. So that's just the stuff that I do. And then, of course, we have like specialized training, like breakout and stuff like that. But outside of the survival space, we have Doc Jones over here who does all the medical training. We have Amber Landry who does the family preparedness. We have Mikey Hernandez who does all the mobility. So how to drive 4x4s, mobility experience. Then we have all the gun guys. So Matt Vandy and Matt Shea and Eric out in Colorado. And, we've got all the guys all across the nation who do basic pistol, defensive pistol, performance pistol, basic performance and defensive carbine. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Oh, and then by the way, we have a new jiu-jitsu academy that Greg Lappin is starting.
I just heard about that yesterday.
And Greg is a beast, by the way. Like,
gosh.
I'm a purple belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I haven't trained as much as I should, and Greg will tell me that I haven't trained as much as I should. Greg humbled me beyond belief to the point where I was like, I can't do anything against this guy. He's legit. And Greg was like, Kev, you know the techniques. Your body has forgotten how to move, which is a very nice way of saying you're out of shape. So Fieldcraft is doing a lot. And then there's all these other stuff that we do, but there's no shortage of physical training. Then there's the online training. There's the Program 62. There's the app content, which we're filming hundreds of hours of content for. It's constant education. And we always look at the podcast as education. We look at the blogs that we write as education. And that's really, that's just some of what we do. I'm sure I'm forgetting others.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Silencer Central. Silencer Central, thank you for supporting us. If you would like to support Silencer Central, if you have any interest in a silencer, which I encourage because it is a game changer in the field, check out silencercentral.com. They will walk you through the paperwork online, as well as they can ship that silencer directly to your doorstep. So check them out and tell them Ike sent you. This episode is sponsored by Secure, the gun storage system. Have you ever wondered the best way to store your guns, ammo, and actually all your valuables? There is a fine line between safety and accessibility. There's also something to be said about being able to customize your safe for your needs. If you're storing long guns, handguns, ammo, or just need a wall to hang your equipment on, Secure has your back. They have cabinets, rooms, and everything in between. Secure safes are simple, strong, straightforward, and, by the way, they don't keep your combination codes. Secure it.
Have you guys thought about putting together? So I have my daughters. We're at Hunt Expo here in Salt Lake, and I have my daughters working the booth with us. First time
by
they've
the way,
done
she
this.
came up to me and she's like, "Can I help you with anything?"
Oh, but that's perfect.
Yeah,
We've
she's
been working
good.
on that.
She's good.
We've been working on that. So, of course, we're in Salt Lake, and two 11 and a 13-year-old blonde girls in the city. And, I'm watching them like a hawk. But I was thinking of this last night as we were scootering from dinner at 10 o'clock at night through the city. I have done a poor job preparing them in self-defense. I'm going to do a better job of this. As a father, is there a class that you guys put on that's like a 2-day self-defense for women class?
Absolutely.
Where would you do that here in Utah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we've done a couple different things for that because that's such a common question. And I get
I
it.
bet.
Like if you've ever had your house broken into, you feel helpless. You feel violated because someone is involved in your space. They're in your living room where you have fond memories and you know that a stranger was there uninvited and it destroys the energy in that room.
Right.
We have personal defense class where it's a lot about verbal de-escalation. It's about using pistols. But so many of the solutions are get out of there, learn how to create space. We are doing a program with the FRG group, which is Family Readiness Group, since the North Carolina office is not far from Fort Bragg, which some people call it Fort Liberty. The folks who live in that area still call it Bragg.
Fort Bragg.
Yeah. So that being
you
said,
can change the name, but the people are going to call it whatever they're going to call it.
Absolutely the case. So we run a personal defense class where, again, you're learning to identify issues. You're learning how to create space. We have a good relationship with Tony Blauer, who shows a very simple way of framing your body to use your whole body as a weapon called the spear system, and you're using shock entry. So instead of using your fist, which I broke in my hand, sparring, it hurts. Your forearms are stronger than your
knuckles.
Your knuckles. So there are courses like that. And I would say for younger kids, the best defense is learn to create space. You could have all the desire, you could have all of the capability to do harm, but if you don't have the opportunity, so you have a baseball bat, you're a crazy psycho, or you're one of the migrants that are here with machetes, because that's something that's real in Salt Lake City. If you're 100 feet away from them, they can swing that machete all day. They're not going to hurt you. So teach them how to create space. Something that we always say, and this is just free advice for any listener, we just taught a seminar yesterday on trail defense. We said, especially young girls are taught from a very young age, be polite, be nice.
Right. Be gentle.
You don't have to do that to anyone. You don't owe it to anyone. And the only people who should really be, or you should be concerned about having the respect of, are your close friends and family.
Yes.
And we told the group yesterday, we said, when you're hiking on a trail and you cross someone who looks kind of shady and they're like, "Oh, where are you going? You're going to be out for long?" You don't owe them an answer. No. But yet so many people when you're hiking, they're like, "Oh, I'm going up to Crystal Lake. Oh, I'll be there for 3 days." And now that person knows that your car is unoccupied for 3 days. They'll steal everything out of your car.
Right.
Or they know that you're hiking by yourself and you're
where you're going.
So learn to be very protective of information. And I think as a father, the best thing you can do is learn a duress word. So if your daughter's name is, say, Cassandra, maybe she doesn't like the name Cassie, right? And, you say, if you're in an emergency and you call her by Cassie, she knows start running or break contact, get away.
Right.
There are these little things.
That's a great idea.
It's a duress word, but it can't be something that's so.
It's not a hamburger or something.
Yeah,
it's kind of. It can't be weird.
Right. Like, hey, we should really, give this guy all of our money. Purple starfish. It's got to sound natural, but it's also got to be something that elicits a response that they don't like.
Yeah.
Because then it kind of gives them the blank slate to be like, okay, what's going on here? So come up with a duress word, a name that you call them. I have one with my girlfriend now. She will never call me something unless there's something that I need to be aware of. Like, she could say it to me over the phone, and I would say that call was made in a panicked manner. Something's happening.
Yes.
Or we could be out in public. We could be traveling, and I could say the name I have for her, and she'll know, like, he's about to punch someone, pull a blade, pull a pistol.
Yeah.
I need to get behind him.
Yeah.
Or draw one that she's carrying.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
that's
it's
great advice.
It's
absolutely great
it's
advice.
free. And you know what? This is what I believe in, and this runs counter to the business that we're in. I believe that our goal, whether we're at Fieldcraft or me as a survival instructor and author, give people good advice. And some advice you shouldn't put behind a paywall. It's free.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't matter if people aren't willing to take that advice.
Yeah.
So I could say it like I did in the seminar yesterday, but if someone is like, "Oh, that was a good idea, but we'll get to it." No, you need it now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If it's a good idea, it needs to be implemented immediately.
Correct. Yeah.
That's great. So maybe I'm just thinking through this. Maybe we'll have to do something and bring you guys back up to Wyoming, and I'll do the same thing for all of my families, not just their spouses, but their kids as well.
It's an important one.
I have a bunch of age classes, everything from 3 years old to 18 as kids, and then all the family members. So that's
Here's another free one. So one of my Filipino martial arts instructors in SIOC, Tuan Tom Kyer, he had at one point done a seminar when his kids were smaller, and he said that he always wants to know where the family members are going to be if he needs to take action. And the easiest way for him to know where they are is to have some type of physical contact or have them hug his body some way. So they would, if it was his wife, grab onto his belt and be behind him. So if he moved, she could follow and would know exactly where they had to go. And the kids would do the same thing, hugging onto the mom, and they move as a unit as opposed to, go run, that type of thing. So sometimes breaking contact makes sense. Sometimes getting in line makes sense. But creating that plan where it's like, okay, where will your dad reach for a wallet? Where will your dad reach for a tool? Where will your mom reach for something that could defend you? Set her up for success. Stand here. Don't get off that side. That's so important.
Yeah.
And another one to just practice.
Yeah, that's great. The word Cassandra comes out and people fall in line.
Or Cassie.
Yeah,
right?
Cassie.
Or CC.
I couldn't remember what the name was.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
I did. And by the way, I don't know. You don't have a daughter named Cassie, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay, good.
no,
All
no,
right.
no. I do not. So that's all really, really good advice. Do you guys have online stuff too?
We sure do. So we just created an app, and it's the way we're describing it is kind of like Netflix, but for survival. And I did a whole series on like backcountry. I did one on practical rifle shooting, defensive shotgun, 22, but then also like your backcountry camp, setting up a tent, things like that. Then we have a jiu-jitsu component. We have a mobility component, a med component, a family component, shooting components. Like there's a lot of content there, and it's a monthly subscription. We're continuously adding more content to that app. And that's an easy way for people to get online training, which is great. But again, you need to back up that online training with physical, and you need to back up physical training with online, because there are going to be times where you're going to pull your back. There's going to be times where you are going to do too many kettlebell swings, and now your hamstrings are on fire.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, I just need a day of off, but there is no such thing as a day off. You can always put on a YouTube video. I can't tell you how many times sitting at that booth, I've been watching your hunting videos, and I'm like, there's something I can learn from these videos. And even if the booth is slow, I'm like, I'm watching these. I'm training right now. So you always have to balance the physical training with the mental training, and realize that they're not complete without the other.
Right. So fieldcraftsurvival.com, but what's the app called? Is it just Fieldcraft?
It's Fieldcraft Survival. So you can get it on like Apple Play and like
Google,
all the stores out there. It's easy to find.
So where do people find you? Obviously have Instagram, because you tagged me yesterday. I was like,
sure
Kevin, we get to talk tomorrow.
Yes,
perfect. So Kevin Estela on Instagram, right?
Well, that's my full name on Instagram. I go by, and I gotta preface this. So my old company was Estela Wilderness Education, and I know it's a mouthful. I set it up that way so I would stop getting spam emails.
Yeah.
Because it would be like, hello, Mr. Estela Wilderness Education. I'm like, I'm clearly not replying to that one. But I needed something short for Instagram for Twitter. So my Instagram and Twitter handle is Estela Wild Ed. So I've met people at the show and they're like, Estela Wilded. I'm like, I'm not a Wilded. And I didn't
It's not my last name.
I didn't just Wilded. Like I'm like, it's short for Wilderness Ed. I need to change it back to like K Estela or something. But for now it's Estela, Estela, Wild, Wild, Ed Ed.
And there's a ton of stuff. Of course, I follow you, and there's a ton of stuff on there that I learned. Every time I see you doing something, I'm like, I can, knots. You had a thing on knots.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's an awesome way. I never even thought of that. So get on there. If nothing else, it's free education.
That's right. And I got to say, because I know you're following me, I got to say I follow you to the point where, and these guys.
It's going to get creepy, isn't it?
It's going to get really creepy. It's going to get awkward, but I like bringing the weirdness. Would you provide me an autograph
on my ReadyWise meal?
Yeah, so I'm gonna flip the tables a little bit because at Fieldcraft, like I said, I'm a podcast host. So I just want to say that I was over here at ReadyWise, and this is a shameless plug. It was a free plug. So I'm over there. I'm eating the mango chili rice or the mango coconut rice. I ate the whole damn container because I'm half Asian, whatever. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, hey, I'm going to do a seminar for Emergency Night Out. And we're going to be talking about having a high calorie food. What is your highest calorie food? Okay. And they're like, oh, you should get this one. And they hand me beef stroganoff with cream sauce. And as I look at this container on the front, it says Premium Signature Edition. And I know that it has your signature on the front, but it doesn't have your signature on the back.
That's not my signature.
I know. Okay, that's okay. But then it says professional hunter, president of Eastmans Publishing, and third generation outdoorsman. But then on the back, there's a dashingly handsome gentleman staring into the distance. And I'm curious if you were actually looking at something or if they told you in this photo, like, can you look like you're looking at something that you want to go shoot?
We were actually bear hunting.
Were you really?
Yeah, we were bear hunting. Your buddy, Austin took that photo. We were bear hunting and I was looking up at trying to figure out the peak that one of the guys we were with was talking about.
Okay.
So it was not staged.
Okay. That's good to know. And I know Austin probably had other photos of you. Austin's an amazing photographer.
He is.
That man has talent, and he has talent that he hasn't even tapped into yet.
Yes.
That it's getting better and better.
Yes.
But yeah, bottom line, I was like, I need to get your signature on this. So I don't know where that signature should be. I might put this one back over there and be like, it's actually signed by Ike. Like this, I don't know. So I don't know if you would mind doing it.
Absolutely. Okay. I will sign it. Where do you want it?
We're at whatever you'd like to put on there, and the guy said you would get all red and embarrassed. And I'm going to say for the listeners, just, he is not red and embarrassed right now.
No, I'm not, because you know how many signatures I've done this weekend?
I bet. And here's the other thing for you guys listening. So we're at Western Hunt Expo. We were supposed to do this podcast at noon, and I'm standing on the tailgate of the podcast trailer, and we're just hanging out, and they're like, Kev, Ike is stuck. I'm like, what do you mean he's stuck? They're like, he's trying to get back. People are stopping him. And I'm like, I don't mind. It's cool. But it's funny, like when you're with someone like Ike, like you can't go 5 feet without someone be like, I've seen you on TV. I've seen so it's really awesome seeing it.
It's really fun. In the crowd here they're always so polite,
very much so.
Polite. And I love hearing the stories, and they're somewhat nervous to talk to me. And yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. It is fun though. This I don't know if you looked at the ingredients, but they came to me and said, do you want to do this? And I said, well, how's it work? He said, well, we'll get you in contact with a chef and you guys can work out the details. And so I said, okay, but I'm not going to put my name on it unless there's two things. It has a ton of calories and it has a ton of protein in it. And they said, well, what are some of the ones that you like? I said, honestly, I'm a beef stroganoff guy because you it's hard to ruin, and it always tastes good, and it has meat in it, and it's a ton of calories. And so we built one. I mean, it's got 270 calories per serving, 530 calories per pouch. And then here's the fun one. Everybody goes, holy crap. It's got 43 grams of protein in that.
Right.
Which in the backcountry, those two things are vital.
Yeah. And I was looking at it, and, I'm a huge fan of this one. Anything that's like chicken pot pie, like that one goes a long way. Chicken and dumpling goes a long way. And like I said, I was impressed with the booth over here. This is something too, like stroganoff. You can add to it. Like If you want to throw like little bits of venison in there, even better. Like it extends the meal further.
And if you get tired of eating it, put your I carry Tabasco pouches. They're like ketchup pouches, but they're Tabasco. Add that, change the flavor, completely different deal. So
I feel like we need to like transition the podcast to talk about food.
I know, right? It's making me hungry. I haven't eaten lunch yet.
This needs to be a new podcast, like cooking with Ike,
backcountry cooking.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. So I always ask my guests 3 pretty deep questions, Kevin. One of them is, why do you hunt?
Mm-hmm. So I hunt because I believe in reconnecting with nature. And we've all heard the expression sheep, sheepdogs, and wolves. But in nature, you don't look at a lion and say, oh, that lion over there is a wolf. In nature, you say that lion is a predator. And in nature, there's only predator and prey. And I feel like when you hunt, you are putting yourself back into that environment where you're saying, I'm not going to be a prey animal. I'm going to be a predator.
Right.
And I love the idea that it's the reason why we're here today is because someone in your bloodline was a hunter.
Right.
The reason you're here today is because someone survived because they took protein off the land.
Right.
And we were born with canine teeth. We were not born with all molars.
Right.
We are meant to eat meat. I hunt because I can go into the woods as a survival instructor and teach a class and say, hey, this is how you make a tri-stick. This is how you make a friction fire. And I can show you the bushcraft side. But when I go in from the perspective of a hunter, it's like a different side of me comes out where I might not pay attention when I walk in the woods as an instructor to the wind. Or I might not walk into the woods as an instructor paying attention to like noise discipline. But when I hunt, it's like I take that so damn seriously.
Yeah.
And I set myself up for success where, if I'm back east and I'm hunting from a tree stand, I'll go to that tree stand and I'll range everything. So I don't even have to, I only have a split second for a shot, I already know because I've made a chart of how far it is from the tree stand to the far tree or tree stand to the open field line or whatever. And if I'm out west, then I just love the idea of being self-sustained and like tapping into the long hunter history of this nation, because those guys were some of the most legit survivalists of all time, where they could go further and farther with bullets, beads, and bandages, right? A little resupply of a handful of goods, and they just keep going. So I think for me, and maybe it ties back into the history teacher thing, I am a sucker for tradition. I'm a sucker for nostalgia. I love the old-fashioned ways. I always say that I was born a couple centuries too late. I should have been born when this nation was really in its early roots, because I would have loved the adventure of, hey, let's go explore.
Yeah, let's go out west and see where these rivers actually go.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the other questions is, God willing, you have a deathbed opportunity. You don't get hit by a bus. If you have the opportunity to be on a deathbed and think about it, what are you going to be thinking about?
So this one hits close to home because my mother passed 2 years ago.
Right.
And I had the opportunity of being at her side when she passed. I actually took her pulse when she didn't have one.
Oh, wow.
And it was a powerful experience where I had a wild dream at like 5 a.m. that there was this intense light outside my parents' house near the air conditioner, and crazy intense light. And I was like, I need to wake up. Something in my head said, I need to wake up right now. And she was unresponsive the night before. I fell asleep, and we're all sleeping in the living room next to her. My middle sister, Wendy, my dad, myself. So we're all sleeping there. We're like, oh, it's not good. I have this wild dream, intense light. I wake up. I'm like, I got to check on her. I go and check on her, and she had passed. I really do believe that there's an afterlife. I really do believe that our time on this earth is definitely borrowed. But I also believe that everything that we do here there are ripple effects for eternity. And what I mean by that is that we're leaving a legacy that is so important, because we only have so much time, but how we leave the earth is important. The reason I wrote a book is so people will have something to remember me by after I'm gone. The reason I created a charity fund called the Estela Wilderness Education Fund is so I could send kids to summer camp programs if their parents couldn't afford them. I feel like if I were on my deathbed, if I had that privilege of being able to reflect just for a second, I would say, did I live life to the fullest, to the point where I can say I lived a good life? I was a great man, not just a good man, but a great man, where I was looking out for others. And I know that I would have a moment where I would say, I don't feel like I'm worthy. And I think if you go through life where you're constantly trying to earn your place, you're going to live a life where people will look up to you for making the right decisions, for surrounding yourself with good individuals, for treating people the way you would want to be treated. So I think that, to me, is what I would say. I would say, if I could look back on my life, I would say, am I worthy? But I would also say, I'm ready. I'm ready for the next step.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really profound. I too believe there's something else, that we are living on borrowed time, and there's something greater beyond this, and you have to be very intentional on what you do here.
And here's something else, right? When people say, why do you hunt? And when people say, well, why do you go out in the woods? Why do you carry a backpack and go up in the woods and go backpack fishing for 3 days? And you don't, it's like, because there have been other people who have said to me, I'm wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
I live through you.
Yeah.
And I look at it as like, I have every single day to take life and take it to the fullest, and to do things that other people can't, because that's my way of respecting them.
Yeah.
It's like, do things that other people will look up to, and maybe you'll inspire them along the way. Maybe you'll take them out of a negative state that they're in, a dark place that they're in, by doing something where they're like, man, my life is terrible, but I get an escape by watching what you do.
Yeah.
So I think it's
That's
so
cool.
important that you and I and the listeners, we just continue doing positive things in the great outdoors, because there are people that want to be where you are. And no matter how negative you view your life, I think there's someone who will kill to be in your shoes.
Yes. It can always be worse.
Correct.
And it can always be better.
That's definitely correct.
So last one, which is a fun one,
Yeah.
especially for you, because this would be an entertaining one for sure.
Okay.
If you were given the opportunity to do a TED Talk, what would it be on?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I bet you've thought about this.
I sure have. Okay. If I were to do a TED Talk where the only goal was to get people laughing, I would do a TED Talk on how to wipe your butt with snow. Okay. And this is maybe the sales pitch, because I did a whole episode for our Fieldcraft app on how to do your business, right?
Yeah.
How to take that sit down meeting. So with that being said, and by the way, I'm going to give total credit to the guys in Colorado for telling me that you call your number 2 break a sit down meeting. So Matt Shea, Matt Vandy, that's for you. So with that being said, that TED Talk could actually be a lot of fun, because it teaches resilience, it teaches resourcefulness, it talks about, physical discomfort.
Yeah.
And granted, when you do wipe your butt with snow, it does give you that moment of pucker factor, where maybe if you're at a normal baseline of 7 or 8, and if you get scared, it goes up to 10. Pucker factor takes you to 11.
Yeah.
So
You're expanding your comfortability.
Oh, definitely, while contracting your butthole. So I probably would do a TED Talk on that, and people would laugh, but I would tie it back to the idea that, we all have to do that. It's something we can all relate to. And if we can relate to something as simple and foolish and stupid as finding the perfect snowball snow to wipe your butt with snow, and not powder because it sticks to you, and not granular because it scratches you, then we can relate on other ways, right? Which is probably a less...
This is getting us back to... we're connecting everyone.
Yeah, so it's definitely a less... glamorous speech that Rocky at the end of Rocky 4 gave, right?
Yeah.
If I could change, you could change, right? If I could wipe my butt with snow. But seriously, I think if I were to do a more direct TED Talk with what do I believe in? What has really resonated with people, whether it's a shotgun class, a land nav class, a survival class, goes back to my late mentor, Chris Syak. And Chris Syak said, readiness. Let's talk about this word ready. Readiness is the combination of awareness, preparedness, and willingness. And you can apply that concept, which is such an important concept, to anything that you do in life. You can say, are you ready to go hunting? Well, let's see. Are you even aware if it's hunting season or not? Are you prepared? Have you shot your rifle? Do you know if it's sighted in?
Right.
Are you willing to go the extra mile where 90% of the people that are hunting from the road are not going to hike further, but you will? Well, if you can't say yes to all 3 of those, then you're not ready. But then you can apply that readiness formula to, how about taking a quiz if you're a little kid? Are you aware that there's a quiz tomorrow? Have you taken time to study? Are you willing to not throw the football around with your friends to put in the extra hour to study to get a better grade? I think I would do a TED Talk to honor my late mentor in the SIOC family, because that readiness formula has brought me to where I am today. I use those 3 simple elements with everything that I do, where I say, like, okay, am I ready to do the presentation here at Western's Hunt Expo? I've got all my gear. I'm willing to spend time on the airline instead of, watching the movies. I'm going to read through my presentation. That readiness formula, I think, is gold, and it applies to everything. And it's something I think I would love to share with a massive audience.
That is unbelievable advice. Actually, that readiness thing is, I think, what separates people that are humming life and people that are killing it in life.
Yes. And here's the other thing with it. It's easy to analyze because it's not like you're juggling a dozen pieces. It's only 3.
Yeah.
Are you aware? So do you have an understanding of what you're doing? Have you done it before? Right? Like past experience helps you determine future action. Are you prepared? It's not just the gear that you have, it's the skill set. And then are you willing? And all these are answered with yes, no questions.
Yes.
And it's so easy to just do a quick readiness check. And if we can get more people speaking that same language, then my job as a survival instructor, a bushcraft instructor, will be so much easier, because we'll have fewer people that get into these emergencies that you read about in the news and so forth.
100%. Well, I appreciate you coming on
anytime
and hanging out with us. I promise you I will get a bottle of Wyoming whiskey in here, the Goliath, which I hear you are a little might be your favorite one of the 3.
Okay, so I received it at the North Carolina office, and I was like, this is some good stuff. The Wyoming whiskey was never meant to be just coveted by one person, so I shared some with Jerry and with the guys, and man, it's really cool to receive that, and I know I'm working at a company in Utah where it's not always it's not the community that does a lot of drinking, but I'm not always a member of that community, and I did go to college, and but I will say this: if you guys are going to enjoy it, actually, like, cherish it, relish it. Like, it's not meant to be pounded. Sip on it, like, and always drink to remember, not to forget.
Yep, that's right. That's 100% right. So I will get a bottle of that yet before you leave.
I was hoping we were going to have some here on the
I know. It got real close.
I know.
Back to that story about trying to get across the building. It got real close, but I couldn't get to the room to get it.
Okay.
So
maybe it's a better thing, because if you told me that asked me that TED Talk question, and I started talking about wiping my butt with snow, and I had a couple drinks in me, I probably would let go of a few other facts and details.
We would still be there.
Yeah. We won't talk about some of the other details, maybe offline.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Anytime.
And I can't wait to get you guys up, and we'll do the personal defense course with the group. That'll be awesome. I know. If we do that, I'll probably have a ton of people in town going, is there any way we can sign up? How big can those classes be?
If we bring a lot of instructors, like if we did
broke it into chunks.
Yeah. Because
so
like from a business side, you would make sense to say, like, well, we should have 30 people in that class, but what's the return on investment if you get all those people in there? You're going to have people complaining that they didn't have enough one-on-one time. So we like keeping those classes small. But that being said, if we had multiple instructors with maybe one head instructor and then a bunch of assistant instructors, breakout sessions and whatnot, we could go pretty large.
Really?
And that class to me is one of the most fun ones. As a role player, getting to get beaten up, getting to play the bad guy, stepping out of my normal good guy role. That's a fun one. So anytime you want to do it, I'm game.
Perfect. Well, I can't wait. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
And we'll be, I'm sure, talking again and doing more survival stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You got it, Ike.